Good afternoon. My name is Muyldermans and I work for KBC. KBC is a Belgian-based bank insurance company, and we have about 40% market penetration with SMEs and retail clients. So we do have some experience. Dr. Hilgert took us back to 2005. I want to take you back to somewhere mid-80s, where you had a very active capital markets cross-border activity in Europe. At the time, I worked for Kredietbank, and I started my career drafting prospectuses at the capital markets division. It was certainly not complicated. Our prospectus was no more than 25 to 30 pages. And we did Eurobond issues, and Euro doesn't stand for Europe, it stands for non-local. We did cross-border Eurobond issues, where we issued for the province of Ontario up to New Zealand, housing halls and something like that, and placed these bonds all over Europe, mainly with retail investors. 30% of these bonds were placed with professionals, 70% was placed with retail investors. Very few accidents occurred in these bond issuances because for the SMEs or the largest corporates, it's very important that you pay back for your own reputation, that you pay back your bond issues. So at that time, we had small prospectuses, and everything which needed to be said was in that prospectus. The market evolved later on, and I think also due to technological reasons, because in the mid-80s we had, so to say, to draft our prospectuses with a feather. We had to write anything down. We didn't have text approaches which you can easily redraft and reschedule things. We have to really start all over again from the very beginning. And when you have to redraft the prospectus for 10 times, you start to become very careful and watch your words on everything you are saying. So you think twice on what you do. But the market evolved. We actually saw that the bond issues disappeared gradually, and that a lot of things were taken over by investment funds. So investment funds became at the time the basic provider of investments to retail clients. And jumping from the one to the other, I just want to mention that on the scope, it says that investment funds other than closed-end types are excluded. So I think there's a first remark to be made that closed-end type investment funds are either have to be subject to the prospectus regulation, which has been the case in the past, or they should be comply to AIFMD. AIFMD, which already has a very large disclosure provisions, and therefore also has to bring a PRIPS kit forward. And I think we should not intermingle the two. It should be either the prospectus regulation or AIFMD, but not a kind of an intermingling of AIFMD and prospectus regulation and the PRIPS kit, which is to a certain context also a kind of a prospectus kit related to that. So this is one of the first remarks. Also coming back on intermingling regulations, you see that the sanctions which are foreseen in the current proposal are very harsh. We can, of course, there are some civil liabilities which has to be taken forward, but if we're talking about light regime for SMEs, and which of course an idea I fully support, one has to be careful on sanctions. The draft proposal already starts from criminal sanctions, so fraud is presumed even before you have put your first letter on paper. So we would advocate to actually delete criminal sanctions as such, as it might shy away board of directors or advisory boards of SMEs to go to the market. As far as the threshold of a 10 million euro is concerned, I think this is something which needs to be debated. Also for SMEs, 10 million is not by definition a very large amount. If you're on an SME and you want to renew your plant, or you have to automate a production line, 25 million, 30 million is actually sometimes a minimum amount where you have to start from if you want to not only to tap the market, but when you really need some funding. Another of our concerns is, in fact, that an SME is not concerned about having an up and top prospectus. They are concerned about doing business. That's their first job. Create businesses, create cash flow, create growth. Because our concern is that in the summary, by actually formalizing the risk which has to be included, you intend to miss the point. The point is, for instance, it says that you have to look at the historical performance. I do wonder with an SME, which is at that time has the capabilities to come to the market. What does it matter to have the historical performance? It's okay to work with historical performance in an asset management industry where you evaluate the performance of an asset management company or of a fund manager. And there you can see how able they were to work with the market and to make an interpretation of the market. But that's not the case for SMEs. What I'm concerned about if I want to invest in an SME is where they need the money for. What's the idea? What's the idea behind? Is it operational excellence? Is it enlarging their market? Is it doubling their market? I don't know, but where do they need the money for? How are they going to spend it? And most importantly, how are they going to pay us back? Does this generate cash flow, this idea? And if so, maybe we can ask for statements from audit departments to see whether these plans are realistic. But historical performance doesn't matter with an SME. Future performance does matter, because that's the way that the SME is going to pay you back. So we are a bit concerned that a formalistic approach as to the risk factors which have to be included might be just, or might become, a tick-the-box exercise. And in a tick-the-box exercise, you really offload liability. The liability has to be with the board of directors, the advisory board, with the SME himself. If they don't know where they need the money for, if they don't know whether the money is going to provide them with cash flow, then who the hell should know that is? And this will not be solved by a tick-the-box exercise on a very prescribed risk factor definition. Secondly, or thirdly, we also think that it's a very good idea to tap the market of the retail because it's a huge market. A lot of money is there. If you just look at the deposit, billions of deposits are on bank accounts these days, these can be used in order to grow, to make the economy grow. But it doesn't mean that by definition you should exclude the fact that we have a wholesale and a retail market. We should not take away the wholesale regime because it has proven its viability and its flexibility over the past. Sometimes, and whether these are SMEs or larger corporates, you need to be able to react very quick to the market. This is not something you can do when you only have to tap, or when you by definition also have to tap the retail market. So we would definitely advocate to keep the wholesale regime in place. By the way, if we don't keep it in place, then still there are possibilities to avoid it. And this is to be said, there are many exemptions in the draft proposal. The more exemptions you make, the more possibilities you give away to corporates, certainly to lawyers, to avoid what you really want to obtain. And then just a large point which can be discussed further on is the grandfathering period. We were told by Luxembourg that they have something like 300,000 prospectuses. So if we have to, well, not only us, but if the market has to review 100,000 of prospectuses and the grandfather period is just limited to 12 months, this might become a problem. Specifically, if we see that there are a lot of delegated acts and a lot of RTSs and ITSs to be worked by ESMA, our previous experience with MiFID shows that it's better to be careful on this one. Rather, we would suggest to actually start the transition period of 12 months after that the last delegated act has been published, and leaving the market with all necessary information available with the 12 months. If this is not possible because an end date has to be put forward on the level 1, then we definitely have to go for a 2-year period, 24 months, because otherwise the market will definitely in no way be able to actually make all the, well, new prospectus is not an issue, but actually to redraft all the existing prospectus which are running today. So this concludes my presentation, and I'm very open for further debate.